When you reach your late 60s and early 70s, nobody prepares you for how strange life begins to feel. People warn you about retirement money. They warn you about cholesterol, blood pressure, medications, and doctor visits. But very few people sit down and tell you the truth about what really changes between 65 and 75. And I will tell you something from my own life. This is not the decade when life becomes impossible. It is the decade when life becomes heavier. Little things, ordinary things, things that never used to cost you a second thought, suddenly ask something from you. A little more energy, a little more courage, a little more patience. And if you do not understand what is happening, you begin blaming yourself for changes that are actually happening to almost everybody your age. I want to talk with you about 6 challenges that hit many people in these years. Not to depress you, quite the opposite. I want you to understand them before they quietly steal pieces of your life without permission. Because once you understand what is happening, you can fight back gently. Not with force, not with denial, but with awareness. Stick with me until the end, because the 6th challenge is the one nobody talks about. And it is the one that, if you understand it, can actually make these years the most meaningful of your entire life. I spent years observing these changes in myself and in the people around me. I am not a doctor. I am not a therapist. I am someone who has walked through this decade and watched it transform people I love. My own father, at 68, went from being the most active person I knew to someone who barely left his chair. Not because his body gave out, because his world had quietly shrunk. He stopped taking walks. He stopped calling friends. He stopped trying new things. He told me he was just getting old. But that was not the truth. He had stopped fighting the invisible forces that were slowly taking his life away. Then I watched my mother-in-law, at 72, do the exact opposite. She lost her husband, moved to a new city, and instead of retreating, she started a garden. She joined a book club. She called her grandchildren every Sunday. She made new friends at the community center. She said, "I am not done yet." That simple sentence changed everything. She lived another 18 years, sharp and engaged until the very end. Same decade, same age, completely different outcomes. The difference was not luck. It was understanding what was happening and fighting back. By the end of this video, you will know exactly what those 6 challenges are and how to face them. But first, let me ask you something. Do you feel like your world is getting smaller? Do you find yourself saying no to things you used to say yes to? Have you stopped trying new things? Do you feel like you are waiting for something, but you do not know what? Do you sometimes wonder who you are now that your old roles are gone? If you answered yes to any of these, you are not alone, and you are not broken. You are just facing challenges that nobody prepared you for. Here is what most people do not understand about the decade between 65 and 75. This is not the decade when your body falls apart. It is the decade when your life asks you to reconsider who you are. The first challenge is something I call sameness. This one sneaks up on people. Most folks do not even realize it is happening. One day, you notice you have been driving the same roads for months, eating the same meals, watching the same television programs, sitting in the same chair every evening, while the days blur together, like somebody photocopied your life over and over again. I went through this myself after I turned 70. I had a diner I loved. Same corner booth every Tuesday morning. Same eggs, same coffee, same waitress calling me hun. At first it felt comforting, familiar, safe. But after a while, I noticed something uncomfortable. My world was shrinking without asking my permission. My brain was not waking up anymore. I was not curious. I was not interested. Days stopped feeling memorable. And here is what I learned. The brain gets old faster when nothing surprises it anymore. People think staying sharp means crossword puzzles and vitamins. Those things are fine, but what really keeps the mind alive is novelty, small surprises, tiny moments where your brain has to pay attention again. One afternoon, I drove 3 streets farther than usual and found a little park I had never noticed before. Sat there watching 2 boys play basketball while an old woman fed birds from a paper bag. Nothing extraordinary happened. But when I got home that evening, I realized something. I remembered the day clearly. That is what novelty does. It wakes the mind up. So now I tell people everywhere I go. Once a week, do one unfamiliar thing. Nothing dramatic. You do not need to jump out of airplanes at 73 years old. Just walk a different street. Read a different author. Try a restaurant on the other side of town. Sit on a different bench in the park. The aging brain does not need excitement nearly as much as it needs interruption. Because when every day looks identical, the mind slowly stops recording life, and that is a dangerous way to grow old. The second challenge is the one nobody likes talking about because it feels embarrassing. It is the shrinking of your social world. Not all at once, slowly, quietly. At first, you stop making phone calls because you feel tired. Then you stop accepting invitations because staying home sounds easier. Then months pass and you realize the phone barely rings anymore. I have watched this happen to good people, strong people, people who spent 40 years working around others every single day, suddenly sitting alone in silence, wondering where everybody went. But here is the truth nobody explains properly. Often the people did not disappear first. The impulse disappeared first. The desire to reach outward gets softer as we age. That is why loneliness becomes so dangerous after 65. It is not only about being alone, it is about slowly losing the instinct to reconnect. I remember after my wife passed, there were afternoons where I could hear laughter outside from neighbors on their porches, and I would think to myself, maybe I should walk over there. But then another voice would whisper, maybe tomorrow. That little sentence can steal years from a person. Maybe tomorrow, then tomorrow becomes 6 months. Now listen carefully because this matters. At our age, you do not need dozens of friends. You do not need a busy social calendar. You simply need regular human contact. Tiny repeated connections. The cashier who recognizes your face. The neighbor who waves while taking out the trash. The barber who asks how your week went. These small interactions are more important than pride allows us to admit. Human beings are social creatures until the very end. And I will tell you another thing I learned the hard way. Solitude and loneliness are not the same thing. Solitude can be beautiful. Some mornings I sit by the window with my coffee and the silence feels rich and peaceful. That is solitude. But loneliness feels empty, heavy, like the walls are slowly moving inward. Older people must learn the difference. One feeds the spirit, the other slowly starves it. So if you are listening and you realize you have not spoken to another person in 2 or 3 days, do not ignore that. Do not wait for motivation to magically return. Action comes first now, not feeling. Sometimes at 72 you have to put your shoes on before the desire arrives. And strangely enough, once you get out there, the desire often follows behind you. The third challenge may be the hardest one of all, because it attacks your pride. It is learning how to receive help. Most of our generation was taught that strength meant handling things alone. We raised children, paid bills, worked jobs we hated, cared for sick parents, survived losses nobody even knows about. We became experts at carrying weight quietly. But somewhere after 70, life starts asking a painful question. Can you let someone help you without feeling ashamed? That is not easy. I remember slipping in my kitchen one winter morning. Did not break anything, thankfully. But I sat there on the cold floor longer than I would like to admit, and my first instinct was not to call somebody. My first instinct was to hide it. Isn't that strange? Even alone on the floor, many older people are still protecting everyone else from their own reality. We do not want to become burdens. We do not want our children worrying. We do not want neighbors seeing weakness. But friends, refusing help does not preserve dignity nearly as much as people think it does. Sometimes it only delays disaster. I knew a man named Walter, proud fellow, retired electrician, tough as nails, would not let anybody mow his lawn even after his breathing got bad, would not use a cane, would not ask his daughter for rides to appointments, kept saying, "I am fine." You know what happened? One bad fall, hospital, rehab, lost almost all independence in 6 months because he waited too long to accept small support. That changed me deeply. I began realizing something important. Asking for help early is not surrender, it is strategy. Smart aging is not about proving you still can do everything alone. Smart aging is preserving energy for what matters most. And let me tell you something else many seniors need to hear. People who love you often want to help more than you allow them to. Sometimes when you refuse every offer, you are not protecting them. You are shutting them out of loving you. That took me years to understand. There is another challenge that sneaks into these years so quietly you barely notice it until your world starts getting smaller. I am talking about the body's hesitation. Not weakness exactly. Hesitation. That tiny pause before getting up from a chair. That moment at the bottom of the stairs where you suddenly calculate whether the trip is worth it. That grocery bag you carried easily for 30 years, now feeling strangely heavier than it should. Young people think aging happens like a lightning strike, but most of the time it arrives like fog, slow, quiet, almost polite. I remember standing in my garage one afternoon, staring at a ladder I had climbed 1,000 times before, and for the first time in my life, my body asked me a question before moving. Are we sure about this? That shook me. Not because I could not climb the ladder, but because the automatic confidence was gone. And here is what I want older folks listening to understand. Many times the body does not stop first. The willingness stops first. You avoid one difficult movement, then another, and slowly the body learns smaller living. That is how people shrink without realizing it. They stop reaching high shelves, stop taking walks, stop bending down, stop carrying things. And after enough months pass, the muscles listen. I started fighting this in very small ways. Nothing heroic. Every morning, I began walking a little farther down my block than I felt like walking. Some mornings my knees complained the whole time. But the goal was not athleticism. The goal was conversation with my body. I wanted my nervous system to remember that movement was still part of life. And I learned something powerful. Older bodies respond better to consistency than intensity. You do not need to punish yourself in a gym at 74 years old, but you do need to keep telling your body, we are still participating in life. Because once the brain decides movement is no longer necessary, the decline speeds up quietly in the background. The fifth challenge is one people rarely admit out loud. It is grief that never fully leaves. By the time you reach your 70s, almost everybody is carrying invisible absences. A brother gone, a spouse gone, old friends gone, parents long gone, even the places you love disappear. Restaurants close, neighborhoods change, houses get sold. Sometimes you drive through a street you once knew by heart and feel like a stranger in your own memories. That kind of grief is difficult because it does not arrive dramatically anymore. It becomes woven into ordinary life. You are pouring coffee and suddenly remember somebody who used to sit across from you. You hear a song in a grocery store and your chest tightens for 10 seconds before you continue shopping like nothing happened. Younger people often think grief is something you finish, but older people know better. Grief changes shape. It becomes quieter, but it stays. I still catch myself reaching for the phone to call people who have been gone for years. Isn't that something? The mind remembers love faster than reality sometimes. And I think one reason these years feel emotionally heavy is because older people are grieving constantly while pretending they are not. We become very skilled at functioning while carrying sadness. But I will tell you what helped me. I stopped treating grief like an enemy. I stopped asking, why can't I get over this? And started asking, what if remembering is part of loving? That changed everything for me. Missing people means they mattered. Feeling sadness means your heart is still alive. The danger comes when grief hardens into withdrawal. That is when people stop living before life is actually over. So if you have lost people, and I know many listening have, please hear me carefully. Do not build a shrine out of your pain and move into it permanently. Carry your memories with tenderness. Yes, speak their names. Tell stories about them, but keep living too. Keep laughing too. The people we loved would not want us sitting in dark rooms waiting to join them. Life still asks something from us while we are here. And now we come to the sixth challenge, maybe the deepest one of all. It is the question of purpose. After the old identities fade away, this one hits people harder than they expect. Especially good, hard-working people. For 50 years, you knew who you were because somebody needed you. You were the provider, the mother, the boss, the worker, the problem solver, the caretaker. Every morning had instructions attached to it. Then one day the children are grown, the career is over, the schedules disappear, and suddenly you wake up asking a frightening question, who am I now? A lot of older people become depressed without realizing this is the real wound underneath everything else. It is not simply aging, it is the loss of role. I went through this myself after retirement. For the first year, I kept acting like I was on vacation. But eventually, vacation turns into emptiness if there is no deeper meaning underneath it. I remember sitting in my living room one afternoon thinking, nobody really needs me today. That sentence can become dangerous if you repeat it long enough. But age taught me something beautiful too. Maybe the final stage of life is not about being needed by the world every minute. Maybe it is about finally meeting yourself underneath all the roles you spent decades performing. That takes time and honesty. Some people never do it because they stay busy distracting themselves until the end. But if you sit quietly long enough, eventually you begin discovering what still brings you alive. Not productivity, not usefulness, aliveness. Maybe it is gardening. Maybe it is painting little birds nobody will ever buy. Maybe it is reading history books. Maybe it is helping one lonely neighbor feel seen. Maybe it is simply learning how to enjoy your own company without guilt. There is wisdom in that, real wisdom. The world teaches young people to build identity through achievement. Old age teaches something entirely different. It teaches identity through presence, through attention, through appreciating what remains instead of mourning only what disappeared. And after all these years, here is what I honestly believe. The people who age with the most peace are not necessarily the healthiest or richest. They are the people who learn softness without surrender. They stop fighting reality every morning. They adapt. They become gentler with themselves. They stop measuring their worth by speed, productivity, or independence alone. They learn how to receive joy in smaller forms. A warm cup of coffee, a phone call from a grandchild, sunlight through a kitchen window, a quiet walk at dusk. These things sound small when you are young. Later in life, they become enormous. So if you are somewhere between 65 and 75, or even older than that, I want you to remember something before we part ways. You are not failing because life feels heavier now. You are carrying a brain and body that simply require more intention than they once did. That is not weakness. That is human aging. And despite all the losses these years can bring, there is still deep beauty available to you. There is still curiosity left, still connection left, still laughter left, still purpose left. Maybe not in the loud, ambitious way the world celebrates when we are young, but in a quieter, truer way. The same decade, the same age, completely different outcomes. My father chose to shrink, my mother-in-law chose to grow. The difference was not luck, it was understanding what was happening and fighting back. You can do the same. Start with one thing. Walk a different street tomorrow. Call someone you have not spoken to in months. Let someone help you with something small. Take that walk even when your knees complain. Carry your grief with tenderness, but do not let it become your home. And ask yourself, what still brings me alive? Not what makes you useful. What makes you feel alive? If this video changed how you see this stage of life, hit like so. Winds of thought can bring you more science of the body you inhabit. And comment below, what is the one challenge you are facing right now? Type sameness or loneliness or accepting help or hesitation or grief or purpose. Your answer helps me know what to cover next. And if you are ready to take one small step today, type, I am starting today. Your best years may still be ahead of you. Start today. Send this video to someone who needs to hear it. Your friend who has stopped going out. Your parent who thinks they are too old to change. Your spouse who has lost their sense of purpose. Their lives are not over. They just need to be reminded that they are not done yet. You are not done yet. There is still curiosity left, still connection left, still laughter left, still purpose left. Your next chapter is waiting. Start today.